And I don't know if this is just a sports thing. I'm sure it goes on in politics. I don't know because I don't care. I don't watch politics. I don't listen to it. It's not my thing. But when it comes to sports, when there's these certain issues that pop up, it's very obvious that people really hold on to their opinion and their take so much so that they don't want to be wrong. Because I'm watching the 49ers and I'm looking at it going, I mean, they sure seem pretty good. And Brock Purdy sure seems pretty good. And I'm thinking, this was the same team who people were panicking over and doing victory laps because Brock Purdy had struggled and they were struggling. And that was happening just a couple of weeks ago. And yet here we are, and they're playing on a short week on the road in a tough place in a divisional game, and they absolutely sawed off the Seattle Seahawks for 4 quarters and 3 hours of football last night. And it just goes to show you that people just don't want to be wrong. Because there were so many people out there when Brock Purdy was struggling just for those 3 games. And keep in mind, he might have had a concussion or multiple concussions, depending on, which Twitter doctor you believe in. But you're watching Brock Purdy struggle, and people were so ready to say, see, told you. He's not the guy. The 49ers aren't going anywhere with Brock Purdy. He's been exposed. He's lost 3 games, and he struggled, and he threw interceptions. It's like, okay, so he struggled a little bit, and we're just going to get ready to forget all the other games before that, all the other success he had. I'm going to forget all about that stuff. We're just going to focus on these 3 games, and that's going to be our takeaway when it comes to Brock Purdy. Okay. And then they come off the bye, and they've been fantastic, and they've been dominant, and Brock Purdy looks pretty good. And you're going to get the box score, like Billy box score readers out there are going to go, what do you mean? He's got 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He only threw for 209 yards. It's like, oh, dude, watch the game. Like, if you actually watch the game and have an honest feeling and opinion about it, you watch the game and you go, nah, man, the guy's good. And he plays really well. Yeah, but once all those other players are gone, like Christian McCaffrey, when he was injured, not the same player, Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams. So what do you want him to do? Go up to John Lynch's office, knock on the door, and say, hey, would you trade all our good players? I got something to prove. Like, who does that? It's like, you know what? I'm the fastest person in the world, but I got to prove people that I can do it without one of my legs. Can we go ahead and get this surgery done immediately? I just want to prove my point here. Like, what do you want them to do? Trade away all their good players? Like, everybody tells you, work smarter, not harder. Okay, well, you know what's smart? Having really good players around you. George Kittle, that offensive line, the running game, the coaching staff, all that stuff. Brock Purdy's fantastic in it. Yeah, but he's just a product of the system. Okay, dude, what do you want him to do? Go to another system? Trade me away immediately. Where would you like to go? Carolina. Send me to Carolina. Okay. I mean, we already, got Christian, but I mean, I guess we could just swap. Okay, fine. I got to go to Carolina, where I got an owner who turns and burns on head coaches at a rapid pace, who's got a coach in Frank Reich who just got there and has already given up play calling duties once and then took him back, and still it was the same result. And they've got nothing to surround the number 1 overall pick. But I got to prove to everybody else that I can play, because I don't want people to tell me that I'm only a product of the system. And so I'm watching Brock Purdy last night. I'm going, dude, it's okay to be wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong about your evaluation of Brock Purdy. Christ, the 49ers are wrong. They were wrong how many rounds? Almost all of them. That's why he was sitting there as the last pick of the draft. Like, there's nothing. It's fair story. This perfect example of this. All right, and I've told this story before here on the air. Full disclosure. The Super Bowl between the Broncos and the Seahawks. All right, if you want a lesson on how to take your L's and be wrong about something, in that Super Bowl, you remember the one at MetLife Stadium? The NFL thought it was a great idea to play a Super Bowl outdoors in a cold weather environment. And then there was like 17 inches of snow the next day. They just dodged a bullet completely. I was 1-17 in my picks for that Super Bowl. Now you're probably thinking, well, how are you 1-17? You make one pick for the Super Bowl before the Super Bowl, and so you got it wrong. Big deal. Where do you get 18 total picks? Well, when you venture down the path of being a degenerate gambler, this is what happens. Not only do you pick the Denver Broncos, which I did, and I was convinced Denver was going to win that game. When the game starts and a snap goes over Peyton Manning's head and there's like a safety and a bunch of other things, you just double down and triple down and quadruple down until you've made 18 wagers and you've won one of them. Live bets, first quarter, second half, fourth quarter total, point spreads, you name it. I was atrocious. I got dismantled. If I was married at that time, 100% chance I would have been divorced the next day. And not even because of the degenerate gambling, but because she would be disgusted at all the losing. And then she would question why I was on my phone and so frustrated with what was happening on my phone so much. Like, that's the optics of that are you're having an affair. And you're not liking the pick you just got in return. So now you're trying to figure out a way and navigate the waters to get a better pick sent over. That's how that would have gone. But it's okay. I own it. I accept it. Next Super Bowl, came back, probably lost some more. But the point is, it's all right to be wrong. You don't got to hold on to it like a hostage. You're not robbing a bank. And you watch Brock Purdy, you watch the 49ers, I'm like, where was all the outrage for this guy? They're great. He played really well. He's a really good quarterback in that system, whatever. Like, I don't know if you want to hold that argument. You can hold on to it as long as you want. But the Niners are good. Brock Purdy's good. They're fine. And if you don't see it by now, you might be an idiot. Sorry, but that's just the reality of the situation. Jonas Knox here, Fox Sports Radio, in for Colin Cowherd on the Herd. All right, so I do have to point this out. Speaking of Super Bowl picks, the Dallas Cowboys were my Super Bowl pick. Now, I'm not going to sit here and celebrate on the air following that game against the Washington Commanders and try and use that as a catapult for a, look what I am, I picked the Cowboys, and they look like a great football team. I'm not going to do that. As you've just heard, I am fully aware of my flaws, and I will expose them here on the air and have no issues doing it. But I'm watching the Dallas Cowboys, and a bunch of teams came to mind, and I want to list these teams off to you. And I want you to tell me what all of these teams have in common, because there's two things that all these teams have in common. All right, so I'm going to list these off for you. The Giants, the Jets, the Patriots, the Chargers, the Rams, the Panthers, and the Commanders. They all have something in common. They have two things in common. All right. Number one, they're all bad. Okay? Now, a couple of those teams are like 4-6, but 4-6 means you're probably not going to the playoffs. So, by definition, for the sake of this take, that's a bad football team. So all of those teams that I just rattled off are bad. Giants, Jets, Chargers, Rams, Panthers, Commanders. They're all bad. You know what the second thing is they have in common? Those are all the teams that the Cowboys have beaten. Okay? So as much as I want to sit here and try and gloat, and as much as I want to sit here and say, hey, man, I feel great about my Super Bowl pick. I feel great that I had the Dallas Cowboys go to the Super Bowl. Did you see what they did to Washington? When you go through the list of teams that Dallas has beaten this year, sometimes you just got to be honest about things. You just got to be truthful. They're not really beating very good football teams. It's like, well, yeah, but they've only got 3 losses on the year. Okay, like, but those were 2 so far, the Niners and the Eagles, who are good, and then inexplicably the Arizona Cardinals. Somehow, they lost to Arizona. How that happened, I have no idea. But somehow the Dallas Cowboys lost to the Arizona Cardinals. So we can, and you're hearing the Dak for MVP, you're hearing, the fact of the matter is, the Dallas Cowboys have not beaten anybody yet. And so we could have the conversation about, well, no, but this is a different Dallas team. Look, I want them to be different. Do you think I'd like losing that many bets in the Super Bowl? Do you think I'm proud of that? Like, do you think when my son gets old enough, I'm going to tell him about all my gambling experiences, and that's going to be a proud moment for me? No, I want to get something right. I would like that to happen. I would like for the Dallas Cowboys to win a Super Bowl. Do you know the chaos that would ensue? You know how many Cowboy haters there are out there? It would be tremendous to dance on some graves, to say you called your shot, and you can't do it. You come away from that game and you go, man, Dallas did what Dallas does. They beat a bad football team. Washington stinks. They just do. And Dallas did exactly what they should have done. It was Thanksgiving. It was national TV. You had everybody watching. They jumped in a Salvation Army bucket and pulled out some turkey legs wrapped in foil, which, by the way, overrated snack at a carnival. It looks really cool. It's like one of those big, goofy souvenir cups you get in Vegas. Like you're walking around and you've got an Eiffel Tower with a guitar strap wrapped around you and you're drinking a cocktail in the middle of the day. It's like, hey, man, this is a great idea. And then you're halfway through it and you go, it's watered down. I can't see straight. I feel like a cyclops. I nearly got run over by a lift. It's not a great idea. Like, look, I would like to sit here and tell you, hey, man, the Cowboys after yesterday, that's fun. Cowboys winning a Super Bowl, great story. Mike McCarthy winning a second, we haven't seen it very many times with the coach. He's won a second Super Bowl with another team, and Dak finally proves all the haters wrong, and blah, blah, blah. Do you feel bad for it? All that stuff being said, I would love for that to happen. But nothing from yesterday in that game tells me the Cowboys are any different than what they've been against all of those other awful teams that we just listed off. It still comes down to, can you beat Philly? Can you beat San Francisco? We're going to find out in a couple of weeks on Philly. And if we get to the playoffs again, can you beat the Niners? And I don't know if you've seen how that's gone lately. It hadn't gone real well for the Dallas Cowboys.